All right, everybody, peace. Welcome to the Started by the College Football Show. Wherever or however you're listening, we're so grateful to have you here with us. As you guys know, I'm your host, Sean Cottle, and we have some very interesting storylines that we're going to be covering today, guys. One of those storylines, unfortunately, is not coming as a surprise to me and many of the other viewers and listeners of this show. And that storyline being Notre Dame's upset loss against Northern Illinois from this past weekend. So we're going to be covering that game, guys, as well as Alabama's victory over South Florida and whether there's some cause for concern down in Tuscaloosa. We're going to be covering all of that and then some, guys. But before we get started, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well so you guys can stay up to date on all of our latest content that we post daily. And if you would like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/StartedBodyShow/tip. And if you'd like to gain exclusive content from Started Body, be sure to follow us on Patreon.com. You can do so by going to Patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in Started Body Show. That way you can gain exclusive content that we post daily. So with that being said, guys, let's go and get right into it, shall we? Like I said, this might be news that is surprising to some, but to us over at Started Bother You is not surprising at all. Something I always talk about ad nauseum is how Notre Dame is constantly ranked much higher than it should be in the start of the season. And when that happens, unrealistic expectations are thrusted upon Notre Dame. And this year is no different. They were ranked in the top 5 going into the season. Top 10, my apologies. Ranked in the top 10 going into the season. They beat Texas A&M on the road last week in week 1 to kick off the year. By the way, this a Texas A&M team that is not very good. Not very good at all. We ranked Texas A&M much higher than they should have been. So Notre Dame defeats Texas A&M on the road. They come into this week against Northern Illinois, a team that many would be considered a easy victory for Notre Dame. However, the same issues that plagued Notre Dame in their loss against Northern Illinois are the same issues that have plagued Notre Dame, not just from last season, but quite frankly throughout the entire Marcus Freeman era over at Notre Dame. An inability to execute offensively, an inability to be explosive offensively, and poor quarterback play. And I'm not blaming it entirely on Marcus Freeman, because it is difficult to be successful as a head coach at any level of football without proficient and at the least efficient quarterback play. So I understand that there are some issues that Marcus Freeman is dealing with at Notre Dame. However, there have been a plethora of opportunities for Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, to go in the transfer portal and pick up, legitimate quarterbacks in the portal. However, Notre Dame has not been able to do that. They have shown an inability to be successful and, quite frankly, to play up to par against teams that are ranked in the top 25, and we see it happens all the time. Whenever they play against good opponents, they fall short. And I believe that the AP poll and the CFP committee is actually doing a disservice to Notre Dame when they rank them so high at the beginning of the year, because they place unrealistic expectations on Notre Dame and the fan base at Notre Dame. So now fans are watching Notre Dame, and they're thinking to themselves, okay, Notre Dame is a top 10 team. Notre Dame is possibly a top 5 team. And then they go and lose to Northern Illinois. And this happens. And now you have people calling for Marcus Freeman's job. They're calling for a change at quarterback. All of these brash decisions that are being made off of unrealistic expectations. Notre Dame was never a top 5 team in the country. Notre Dame was never a top 10 team in the country. Notre Dame was never a top 25 team in the country. However, because people see that number 5 next to their name, they get an unrealistic sense of what Notre Dame actually is. And the only reason that Notre Dame gets that type of recognition, that type of preseason accolade, is because it's Notre Dame. If this was any other program that had the same exact coaching staff, the same exact players, the same exact play style, they would not be a top 5 team in the preseason poll. And Notre Dame's success is only based off their success in its past. What has Notre Dame done in the past 4 or 5 years to garner them the credibility of being ranked so high to begin the season? Legitimately. I'll wait. Because personally, I can't think of anything. And when stuff like this happens, coaches are the first to get blamed. And as you guys know, the viewers of this program, I'll never call for a coach's job. I'll never call for a coach to be fired. But what I will do is keep coaches accountable and start to question the serviceability of certain coaches. Is this the right coach for the job? I'll never say someone needs to get fired. But what I will question is whether Marcus Freeman is the right coach for Notre Dame. I believe that's a fair and valid question based off the data, based off what we've seen so far from his tenure at Notre Dame. What remains to be seen for Notre Dame moving forward from this? We will have to wait and see, but it's unfortunate because this is not a surprise to me. This is not a surprise to me that on a Tuesday afternoon, this is our biggest storyline coming out of college football. And that's unfortunate. That is unfortunate. What does that say to the landscape of college football? What does that say about Notre Dame in itself? Eventually, you can no longer rest upon your laurels. You can no longer rest upon your namesake. You have to do something productive in the now, in the present. And that's on you, Notre Dame. But before this segment ends, I do want to give a huge shout out, a huge congratulatory to Thomas Hammock, the head coach over at NIU, who actually was the former running backs coach for the Baltimore Ravens, and the running backs coach and offensive coordinator for the college that I went to school at actually set in on a symposium, on a lecture in which Thomas Hammock was speaking at, and this running backs coach and offensive coordinator was someone who I had a great relationship with, and he talked that this was a couple of years ago, but he talked about how great of a coach Thomas Hammock was and how he would be having a head coaching position sometime in the near future. And lo and behold, he was right. Thomas Hammock is now coach of Northern Illinois, who just pulled off so far the biggest upset of the year. So huge shout out to Thomas Hammock. But with that being said, guys, in our next segment, we are going to be discussing another team that is perhaps having some question marks next to their name. So be sure to stick around for that, guys. You're not going to miss it. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. In the first segment of our show, in case you missed it, we discussed Notre Dame's upset loss to NIU and what that means for Notre Dame moving forward, what that means for Marcus Freeman moving forward, and why Notre Dame was actually done a disservice by the AP poll with them being ranked so high to begin the season. And why this loss comes as at a surprise to nobody here at Sorry to Bother You. By the way, let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions on this Notre Dame loss to NIU. Is this a reflection, perhaps a representation of where Notre Dame is trending as a program, or is this a blip? Should Marcus Freeman's head coaching position start to be questioned? Or is this a random occurrence, a random event? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Leave your thoughts in the chat room. I'm looking forward to hearing all about it. But in this segment, guys, we are going to be discussing a team that might have a few question marks, particularly on the offensive side of the ball so far, 2 weeks into the season, and that is, of course, Alabama. And as you guys know, Alabama defeated USF by a score of 42-16. USF is the team that Alabama played last year, in which they didn't start Jalen Milroe, and they benched Tyler Buckner and had third-string quarterback Ty Simpson in, and they won by a score of 17-3. And that's when a lot of people started to question Alabama and what they'd be able to do. And as you guys know, Alabama went on from that game to win the SEC championship game and make it to the college football playoff. So this is the rematch of that game from last year. And for those that were watching the game, there was a lot of cause for concern. There's quite a few sweaty palms in Tuscaloosa due to the way the game was moving. It was difficult for Alabama to get into an offensive rhythm up until about midway through the fourth quarter. Quite frankly, the defense played well, in limiting USF to, I believe it was under 350 yards total, and forcing USF to commit turnovers and settle for field goals in the red zone. The defense played proficiently, played efficiently for Alabama. And by the way, last week I talked about how the linebacker position needed to step up for Alabama in order for them to be truly successful. And that linebacking core and their ability to seal the edges and prevent outside runs has improved tremendously in just a week. This is a linebacker core that isn't built the same as previous Alabama teams under the Nick Saban regime in the terms of they're big and kind of stocky, and they do a good job of closing up the gaps, the interior gaps. This linebacker core does a great job of closing off the edges and preventing those, like I said, jet sweeps and counters and zone reads. They do a good job of funneling everything back to the middle. So the linebacking core is starting to improve for Alabama. However, offensively, there was a cause for concern. There was 3 fumbles on 4 possessions to start out the second half for Alabama. For those who watched Alabama last year, bad snaps, fumbled snaps, were a cause for concern. Huge cause for concern for Alabama last year. And though the snaps in itself weren't too big of an issue except for one on a fumble, the fumbles in general were a bit of a cause for concern for Alabama because it showed a lack of focus for the team. So if there's any question marks for Alabama, I would say that is the ability to focus, not necessarily fumbles and ball control in and of itself, but more so just focus. And what Alabama did show, though, offensively, is that when they're in a rhythm, when they are able to move the ball, they move proficiently. And Listen, in the fourth quarter, Alabama scored 21 points in 6 plays. If I'm wrong about that, one of you guys can correct me, but it was a number quite similar to that. A huge run, burst up the middle, was off the sideline by Jam Miller. A huge run by Justice Haynes, and a 16-yard pitch and catch from Jalen Milroe to Kobe Prentice. It really broke the game off for Alabama. And I know that the tackle that was starting in place of Caden Proctor, who was hurt, was getting a lot of flack because he had, I believe, 4 holding calls on him, and he just didn't have a good game. And so they sub out that tackle, and they replace him with another tackle who wasn't even supposed to be playing that game because he was hurt as well. And that the new tackle comes in, and that's when Alabama, like I said, scored 21 points in 6 plays or something like that. And is that a cause for concern for Alabama, depth at the offensive line? I don't believe so, because we have to remember that offensive line, that tackle that was starting in place of Proctor initially, was a freshman. And it's good that he's able to get those reps and make those mistakes now against the USF, as opposed to a Georgia or a Tennessee or an LSU or even a Wisconsin next week. It's good that these young players are able to make mistakes, and they're able to learn on the fly through in-game reps, because anyone who's played collegiately, professionally, we all know that there's no simulation for game reps. I don't care how game-like you make the practices, how game-like you make the workouts, there is no simulation for game reps with the fans on your back, with that aura and atmosphere and that heightened sense of adrenaline, being under the lights, being in the stadium with all eyes on you. You cannot simulate that in any way, shape, or form. So the best way to get that experience is simply by playing in the game reps, playing in the game in itself. So it's good that these young players are able to get that experience and learn on the fly just like that. So is there cause for concern for Alabama offensive side of the ball? I don't believe so. Every team up until this point has had, blips where they perhaps have not been efficient on either offense or defense side of the ball. I can, watching all of the top 5 teams play, they've all had moments where they didn't look as proficient as they should have been. So not to make too much of it, I don't believe there's a legitimate cause for concern. Let's see how they play against Wisconsin this week. I believe then we can start to perhaps prognosticate and get a better approximation of where Alabama is at this point in the season. But for right now, great victory for Alabama, great performance by USF. I mean, wow, is that going to be a great team moving forward, right, this season? But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Is there cause for concern for Alabama on the offensive side of the ball? Is there cause for concern perhaps on the defensive side of the ball? Or is it too early to make a statement like that? With that being said, guys, that's it for our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a wonderful show. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well, so you guys can stay updated on all of our latest content. None of this is possible as you guys are fans, and are so grateful and honored to have this platform so we can talk about college football as a whole. We'll be back again, guys, tomorrow with another college football show, and we'll be back on Thursday as well with an NFL show. So that being said, guys, keep you stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions. Until next time, peace.